Guten Morgen, friends. So, it's time for a Bible study. Glad to be back after taking off a few days to be with family and whatnot out at Pacific Beach, coast of Washington. So, we are in Matthew chapter 12, starting in verse 38 today. And it says, Then some of the scribes and Pharisees answered, saying, Teacher, we want to see a sign from you. But he answered and said to them, An evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign, and no sign will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and nights in the belly of the great fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and nights in the heart of the earth. The men of Nineveh will rise up in judgment with this generation and condemn it, because they repented at the preaching of Jonah, and indeed a greater than Jonah is here. The queen of the south will rise up in the judgment with this generation and condemn it, for she came from the end of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon, and indeed a greater than Solomon is here. So, here we have the Pharisees wanting a sign. They want something that'll validate the ministry of Jesus in their eyes. And Jesus has a response for them. So, much of this really applies to the day and age in which we live. And it's something that can easily be taken out of context. Or, no, that's not what I was trying to say. I guess it's something that it just needs context when we talk about signs and wonders and wanting to see a sign, because really I believe to hold the proper position, which obviously I know, I'm joking around there. I mean, that's the thing is, we all assume we know the right place to stand. We do our best, and there's no really problem being confident in what you believe, but also being confident that you might be wrong. But it's walking a knife edge between two groups and two camps that quite often sit fat and happy on the far ends of a spectrum, when in reality, I think the Bible it paints a picture that creates a tension where it's really easy to go over here, over there. Here's the first thing we'll talk about is Jesus tells them an evil and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. Today, there are numerous ministries which I think it's fair to say that the defining element of their ministry is signs and wonders. That's one of the signs and wonders churches. Like you go there and you're going to see signs and wonders. What might these be? It could be prophetic words and speaking in tongues. It could be healing, supernatural healing. It could be casting out of demons. These are the kinds of things we see in signs and wonders ministries. If you back up in Matthew, just a couple of chapters, or I guess it's a couple of pages, few chapters, in Matthew 27, remember there was a group of people Jesus describes as coming to him saying, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? To which Jesus says he will reply, depart from me. You practice lawlessness. He says, I never knew you. And that's like kind of baffling, kind of mind-blowing, that these people who are prophesying, casting out demons, and doing wonders, Jesus says, I never knew you. And this is where it's important for us to understand. I'm going to give you two more texts to maybe flip or check out. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Timothy's too far. Back up. It's only a couple pages long. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it talks about the coming of the Antichrist. And it says in verse 9, the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders. So the Antichrist, when he comes, there's going to be signs and wonders. Chapter 13 of Revelation, I think. Didn't look ahead. Yes, chapter 13. And, I'm just going to start in verse 11 for some context. It's important to have context. It says, I saw another beast coming up from the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. This is the false prophet. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell on the earth to worship the first beast. So this is the false prophet getting people to worship the Antichrist, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, so that even he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of all men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beasts. So verse 15, I was going to stop, but it mentions he was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should speak and cause many as would not worship the image, and would cause, and then he would kill the people who didn't worship the beast. So, back to Matthew 12. But what we see here on one side of the spectrum is that many people who are doing signs and wonders, it seems as if it's not of the Lord. Matthew 7. 2 Thessalonians 2 and Revelation 13, in fact, tell us that Satan himself, through the Antichrist and through the false prophet, is going to be deceiving numerous people through power, signs, and lying wonders. And so when the Pharisees asked Jesus for a sign to authenticate his ministry, Jesus is saying there is something fleshly about really wanting a sign to prove to me what you're saying is true, Jesus. And that's the problem. Something about signs and wonders appeals to our flesh. Something about signs and wonders, we're attracted to the supernatural. But remember I mentioned balancing on a knife edge and 2 camps? Because see, everything I just said, I think is true and it's biblical. But on the flip side, Jesus in Mark's gospel in chapter 16 in the Great Commission there and elsewhere in Acts, when he promises that the power of the Father, the promise of the Father and power, dunamis, will come through the promise of the Father, the baptism of the Holy Spirit, to enable us to be his witnesses. And with Mark, it talks about signs and wonders and things that will be done to authenticate the message. So then, are they good or are they bad? And the answer is yes. We can't be driven by signs and wonders, nor should we be drawn by signs and wonders. And yet there's nothing in the Bible that says that they're supposed to cease. People who believe that there are no more signs and wonders, there's a term for that. It's called cessationist, that they have ceased, that the signs and wonders and miracles of the Bible have ceased. But that's not really what the Bible seems to show us. It's not what the early church seems to show us either. Have signs and wonders been abused? Yes. Have there been false things that have come into the church and quite often signs and wonders be attached to it? Yes. But it doesn't mean that signs and wonders have ceased. And so there's a balance here. There is a balance between desiring that God does do signs and wonders through your church and mine, and yet realizing that there can absolutely be an unhealthy attraction to signs and wonders. And the Bible makes it very clear, again, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and Revelation 13, that signs and wonders will be one of the, if not the chief, I don't know necessarily, but definitely one of the methods that the Antichrist will use to deceive in the end times. And I don't have the verse memorized, and it's a big chapter. But in Matthew 24, it mentions how he's going to come and he's going to deceive. And it talks about, and if even possible, even the elect. And of course, that could be Matthew 24. It could be Mark 12. It's one of those things where I have a lot memorized. Oh, no, for the elect's sake. Verse 24. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and show great signs and wonders to deceive. That would have been a good cross reference earlier. If possible, even the elect. So, church, we need to find a balance between desiring that God still moves miraculously through his people and yet not unhealthily being drawn away to signs and wonders ministry. And again, maybe there's an awesome church that would consider themselves a signs and wonders ministry. I'm not saying that that's like the sole sign of a bad church. I'm just saying you do see issues in oftentimes with churches that go that route. And so what's the solution? Well, Jesus actually gives a solution here. You see, Nineveh repented. And Jesus talks about the sign of Jonah. Now, he mentions Jonah was in the belly 3 days and 3 nights, and so too will the Son of Man. Jesus will resurrect. But notice it says that the men of Nineveh, they repented because they repented at the preaching of Jonah. And the queen of the south, she came up to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And so these are used as examples of pagans who were able to come to God without signs and wonders. Jonah may have been bleached white, and you could make a good case there of that, he's kind of got a miraculous look to him, but for the most part, Jonah preached. And Solomon, how else does he share his wisdom other by teaching? And so what you find is that these adulterous and wicked people, the Queen of Sheba, total pagan, not a Christian, not a Jew, right? And obviously Nineveh was some of the most wicked people the world had ever seen. Yes, the Assyrians would come, and then would come, the Babylonians, then would come the Persians, and then would come but at the end of the day, the Assyrians were the most twisted and wicked of the whole group. The way that they would just mutilate their foes, it's disgusting. And we'll be talking about that this coming Sunday as we talk about Assyria in the times of Micah. And 2nd Chronicles, for that matter. Next week at the church, we'll get to Sennacherib. But they repented at the preaching of Jonah. The Queen of Sheba, she was drawn to the teaching of Solomon. And so at the end of the day, it is the teaching and preaching of the Word of God that is the thing that really should hold us all together. That needs to be the glue that keeps us all stuck in a nice, happy, and healthy place. We should desire signs and wonders. We should be warned that the Bible in multiple places says that deception is going to come through signs and wonders, yet we still want them. And the only way we can keep that in balance is by rightly dividing the word of truth, as Paul encourages Timothy. So, signs and wonders. Desire them. Pray that God would give them. But don't be foolishly drawn away by them. Don't get worked up in a hype when you see a bunch of excitement and you're lacking in these exact key things Jesus said. It was the teaching and preaching, the preaching of Jonah, the teaching of Solomon that drew in the Assyrians of Nineveh, that drew in the Queen of Sheba. Find good teaching and preaching and stick with that. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining me on your Saturday. Tomorrow, this coming Sunday, is Bring a Friend to Church Day again. So I hope you guys are all obedient and are out there sharing the gospel. Revival Church people, you guys better be sharing. We have church events for morning and night. You should come morning and night and catch the entire book of Micah together. God bless you guys. You guys take care. And I'll see you guys around.